Thank you, Al. It's amazing to be here, and it's amazing to see so many people at an event like this, and it seems to grow every time I go to a People Analytics conference. In 2016, at this very conference, April 26, 2016, I announced that I was co-writing a book called The Power of People on People Analytics, and it's a very nervous situation to say that you're going to write something before you do it, because the sort of public commitment is intense. On May the 26th, 2017, that book became a reality and was out there, and you can look at it on Amazon. I know that many of you in the audience have bought it already, and I thank you for that. The collaboration in that book took 15 months to come to fruition, and there were 60 people interviewed across a number of organizations, 54 organizations across 15 countries. And it became, for me, the foundation of what Al just described as Insight 222. I'm now just about, on Monday, to start writing my second book. So if I say it out loud, it might actually happen. And I hope that by around about September of 2020, there'll be a book about excellence in people analytics. Along this journey, and yesterday some of you were with Ian Bailey when he was talking about skills, HR skills of the future, and he would have shown this exact slide, may have looked slightly different, but had the same number on it, which basically says that of all the people that responded to that crowdsourced survey that went to, we reckon, over 100,000 people in November of last year, people analytics in the HR community stands out as the single most wanted skill that people want to learn about. And in doing that, it's important for us to help people, everyone, HR people, HR consultants, HR centers of excellence people, recruiters, learners, comp people, and of course the people analytics profession itself to learn about people analytics even more. If you want a copy of that, I'd urge you to download it. If you haven't already downloaded it, and here, if you just take a picture of that, it will take you straight to that survey, and you can download it straight away. So if you do that, Ian will be very happy, because I know that he checks the download site almost by the minute. But Ian, I know it'll be great. Anyway, there you are. We'll have these slides out afterwards anyway, and you can scan it again then. I'm going to talk about this. Everywhere I go, whoever I talk to in the HR world, in the business world, these three questions persist. How can I improve my impact with people analytics? How can I create more value? And what should I focus on as a priority? These are big topics at every level of the organization. They're big topics for data scientists, they're big topics for people analytics leaders, they're big topics for CEOs and chief people officers. And in doing that, David and I sat down last year and went through a huge amount of research that we collected over about 100 organizations over a period of 5 years, and went through that qualitative data that we had to try and uncover those aspects that people truly believe are the dimensions that will make a difference between poor value, poor impact, and high value, high impact. And we came up with 9 dimensions. We streamlined it down to 9 dimensions in 3 categories around foundational elements, elements that are to do with resources, and elements that are to do with the value that can be created. I'm not going to talk about all 9 dimensions. That'll be revealed. There's blogs and articles on it to a little depth, but that will come out in the true value of a 300-page book next year. I should have put a pre-order thing up here, but, you know, hey, I do know how to write 80,000 words based on the experience of one, which is one data point, so going through that process with David soon. And you know David's a great writer anyway, so I asked David if he would write 79,000 words, and I'll do the other 1,000. He didn't like that suggestion, and since he's not here, I can take the fun out of him. But anyway, in doing it, we basically said there were 7 core questions that you could ask. So one of the things that I found out in talking about the 9 dimensions was when The Power of People came out in May of 2017, many people said, it would be great if there were diagnostics behind this to help me to do things. How should I do it? How should I start? How should I, if I'm in the middle, go to the next level? How should I do different things? And so what David and I produced was a fairly chunky diagnostic behind this that some organizations have taken, and we're starting to build up a huge amount of data. But in that, what we found was that there were 7 very, very particular questions which made the difference between success and failure in people analytics. And the first one is this: do you have a code of conduct around ethics and privacy in your organization as it relates to people analytics? And this was one of 7 questions. I'm going to go through all 7. So do you have that? What's based on that? It's all about governance, by the way. It's all in this top area of foundational elements. And there's an interesting point of the 7 questions as to how many are in that foundational area. But there's been a lot talked about ethics and privacy over the years. This is my new favorite article. Accenture produced this report after Davos in January of this year. It's called Decoding the Organizational DNA. And it's all about trust and data, new workforce data that exists that organizations can unlock as it relates to workforce data. So basically, what they did was they studied a large number of public listed organizations across the world and worked out that if those organizations used more data in the workforce that was accessible, they would be able to create collectively $3 trillion extra revenue. But only, as you see on this side, 92% of employees said that they would be willing to give that data, but only if there was benefit to them. So it's all about privacy, ethics, morals, and trust, and it's about how to uncover all of that. So in this paper, there's a lot more depth about if you do it, and it's a very good business document to take to CEOs, business leaders, GMs, etc., to say, look, if we can collect more workforce data, we will unvalue more opportunity for the organization. Really, really good paper, great infographics along with it. But data is everywhere. And what data will employees truly be willing to give? Here's a video. Some of you have seen this video before. I unashamedly stole it from a marketing person. Those of you that see it for the second time will know exactly where I got it. But it's about Marmite, and it's about privacy, and it's about data.
We've always known that people either love or hate Marmite, but are they born this way? To find out, we teamed up with specialist genetics company DNA Fit.
I'm Thomas Roos. I'm the lead scientist at the Marmite Gene Project. Through scientific research, we've developed a test for these genetic markers called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs in short, that contribute to whether you love or hate Marmite. We use a simple saliva cheek swab, and we analyze it here in the lab in East Anglia. Our results revealed 2 important things. First, that some individuals are genetically predisposed to love Marmite, while others are genetically predisposed to hate it. And secondly, that lovers and haters can coexist in the same family. Even if 2 parents are haters, they can still have a love child.
Based on the research, we developed this simple gene test kit. So if you want to find out whether you were born a lover or a hater, maybe you should take the Marmite gene test. Get your gene test kit at marmite.co.uk.
Okay, even if you're not British, you probably get the sense of humour in there. But if you think about it, this is asking people to give the most private piece of information and data about themselves, their DNA, to an organisation through the post to get something because they believe they're going to get value, and that value is confirmation of whether they've got this gene or not, even though they already know whether they love or hate it. The point is, people will offer their data, the most private data that they have, if they feel that there's benefit. And this is true in all of workforce analytics and people analytics. People will give you all the workforce data they want to if they see that there's a fair exchange of value in it. So about having a code of conduct, it's about entrusting people analytics to your organization and gaining the trust of employees, managers, and executives back so that you can uncover some of that $3 trillion. And when we did this survey in 2017, Al and I and others from Insight 222, we found that at that point in time, 4/5 of respondents said that their projects in people analytics were often or sometimes jeopardized just because of ethics or privacy concerns. 4/5. So if you get this right, you're going to create more value. Microsoft is the best example of this. I know David Green wrote a fantastic article that Dawn Klinghoffer, who's the head of people analytics there, described all the aspects of how she has taken privacy and ethics in people analytics. If you want to prove to your senior leaders that you need more money and more expertise to handle ethics and privacy, I would read that article. It came out about 2 months ago. It's on myhrfuture.com. You can search for it just by putting in probably David Green, Dawn Klinghoffer, privacy and ethics. And that article has reams of information which you can use for your organization. That's number one. Number two, again, we're still up in the top right, methodology. Are people analytics projects prioritized using proper governance and criteria? I spend a lot of my time talking to people analytics leaders and heads of HR about the impact that people analytics have. And I often get disenfranchised by the number of projects I hear about that are sort of experiments. I would call them experiments. They're not really doing anything. And one of the reasons is that there's no real prioritization given to projects. So work comes in, it happens, it gets selected somehow, and work goes out, but often the value is lost. And that's because there's nothing really there to say, how is this work being prioritized? Came across a beautiful example earlier today. I'm sure Maria, I don't think she's here now, but if you were in the BBVA presentation about a digital council for the whole organization that prioritizes all digital work on a quarterly basis by the most senior people in the organizations to make sure that there's value out there. Of course, there's many different ways to do this. In IBM, when I was working in IBM, we started off on attrition analytics, many people do, and we started moving that to skill analytics, saying, which are the skills that we really want in the organization? And when, bottom line, 3 years later, we worked out that there were 4 really primary skills at this point in time. This is about 2013. And those 4 skills, we analyzed and could identify the exact individuals that had the propensity to learn and develop and become valuable to the organizations with these 4 skills in the future. And because of that, we then shifted and started putting more money, compensation money, into those people. Salary increases, bonuses, retentions, et cetera, et cetera. And we calculated the value of return of that and basically went to the CFO the first time. I remember it, 20 million. We want an extra 20 million on top of the salary budget. $20 million is a lot of money in any organization. We want 20 million extra dollars to put to these X number of people. And we know that that will give us $53 million in return. Very specific numbers. They gave us almost all of the 20 million. We returned almost all of the 53 million. And the belief was huge. The next year, it happened again. The next year, again. And 300 million, well categorized and talked about in literature. But what resulted from this was that IBM set up a council that was responsible for deciding what people analytics work was going to be responsible. And there were very clear criteria as to what work would happen and wouldn't happen, so that it had impact and created value. Number 3, again, we're still up in the top right. We haven't even got into the interesting stuff around data and technology, but, methodology. All major projects are sponsored by business leaders, not HR leaders. Came across an example last month where an organization spent 6 months doing a project, and then the project failed, or was cut, shall we say, stopped, because the HR leader did not like the insights. Insights are fact, they're basically derived from facts, as you all know. So you can either accept or reject them. You can't dispute them. They didn't like them, they rejected them, the project failed. All that work and all the opportunity that work could deliver to the organization was lost because the person that was sponsoring had their own personal view on what was right and what was wrong. And that's really damaging here. So we recommend getting business executives involved for the most important. It doesn't have to be every project, but certainly for the most important, the ones of highest value and highest impact. If you do that, a few things are going to happen. Firstly, you're going to get more attention. Secondly, you're going to see that the impact of what you do is more closely being monitored. Now, that's quite scary because also it means that if you're a people analytics leader or a data scientist, your work is going to be scrutinized a little bit more. The deadlines aren't going to be able to slip and things like that. There are going to be problems that you're going to have to resolve. There's conflict that is going to happen. You haven't got a data source. You need some more technology. You need 3 Tableau licenses. You need whatever. All of those things are going to come out. You might have brushed those aside before. Now you can't. But that's all good because these are nice problems to have. And what will happen is your business sponsor will love it. And if you get the sort of return that Oliver Kasper's delivering at the moment in Swarovski, as an example, I know he was talking yesterday, then the ability to get some of that return to reinvest is going to be much enhanced, which means the people analytics gets a higher place on the agenda, which means you create more value and more impact. And it's going to be even better still. And, it's great to see Oliver and Roberto coming out and talking about, I don't know where they are, I can't actually see them, but they talked about this and it's absolutely fantastic stuff. Number 4, we're still in the top area, by the way, we're still in foundation. By the way, when I present and talk to people about these 9 dimensions, everyone wants to talk about skills, technology, data, and business outcomes and culture. No one wants to talk about governance, methodology, or stakeholder management. No one. I can tell you, I do not ever walk into a client or a room of people and they say, give me an hour on governance, Jonathan. It's really cool. It just never happens. People hate it. They hate stakeholder management. They hate the fact that I think there's 7 different types of stakeholders, and probably after you've done a stakeholder map, there might be 30 people on it, of which, might go and have to have 10 really difficult conversations. It's hard work. But I can tell you, if you get the right stakeholders on board, like the project sponsors, it's going to be way, way better. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But the critical stakeholder here is, does your chief HR officer invest in people analytics? I don't mean, yeah, maybe, yeah, of course she does, I'm in the job. I mean, can you go out and do they actually take of 100% of HR budget, and do they take a sliver of compensation or training or performance management or whatever, and shift it to people analytics? Because that's really hard. Because they have to look the other HR executives in the eye and say, last year you got 24% of the budget for training. This year you're only going to get 22% because I'm actually going to give 2% to people analytics. Does that actually happen? Because that's really tough, but it's one of the single biggest factors. Even today I've had 2 conversations where people are saying, I'm not sure I've got the budget for something, whatever it is. I'm not sure I've got the budget. I would turn it around and say, if you can prove the value that you will get by doing one of those projects, and there's many projects that have been talked about here over the last day and a half, if you can prove the financial or potential financial value of a project that you're doing, I would say you'll never not get the money if you get the double negative. You will always get the investment that is given. Always. This is a case in point. I had to make some really tough decisions in my own career on this one. This was back in 2011. We were doing employee engagement surveys in IBM. I was responsible for that, amongst other things, as well as all of people analytics. And the organization wanted to find out what people were really talking about in the organization. What we now term as continuous listening or employee listening, and using natural language processing and things like that. We came up with what was called Social Pulse for the Enterprise, which was looking at what people were commenting on Twitter and public forums across the organization on chats like Yammer and Jive and stuff like that. But in the day, we created this. But to do it, I had to go and ask for $1 million. And you can imagine that taking $1 million is not likely to be successful when you go and ask for that sort of money, because, it's an experiment. We didn't know if it would work. We didn't know if we could get through works councils and all sorts of things. In the end, it was a 3-year project. It cost much more than $1 million. We implemented it. It's now used by the C-suite to look at what's trending in the organization in terms of what people in the organization truly talking about. But it cost some very tough decisions. One of the tough decisions that we made was to suspend the employee engagement survey for what turned out to be 2 years, which was a huge decision to make given the continuity of data that existed and that all the IO psychologists wanted, and there were hundreds of people expecting their presentation and so on. But we had to make some tough choices, and those choices were made in the benefit that we wanted to progress and push beyond the barriers of what we thought was reasonable in people analytics. The chief human resource officer was, at the time, was involved in making that decision, truly wanted to invest in this, not what we had been doing, and in the end we re-brought back the engagement survey, and therefore we had two things to look at. One to look at pure engagement, and one to look at employee listening. Big investment, more money put in, and it grew from there. So these sorts of choices have to be made. Similarly, there's all sorts of business cases around people analytics, but here at AMC Theatres is a movie theatre or a cinema chain in the US. It's a movie theatre chain. And AMC, the chief human resource officer at the time, made a huge investment into what is probably one of the oldest types of people analytics projects. It's the assessment of behaviors of what makes the most important person in an organization. In this organization, it's popcorn sellers. Popcorn sellers return more per person, per customer, to the organization in terms of money than any other person that works in a cinema. So if you can invest in the right people, and he was truly believing that this project was going to return a lot, and in the end, they returned 1.2%. In turn, reducing employee turnover by 40%, down from 123% to whatever 40% less of that is. But that's a huge amount. We didn't focus on the left number, we focused on the right number and looking at the impact per customer, and that's what the Chief Human Resource Officer at AMC wanted to do. Okay, now we're on to new things, skills. This one really makes people nervous because there's a lot of you in this room. So this generally makes people nervous. Does the people analytics leader get things done and create value? So most people are very nervous when I bring this up in a conversation where the people analytics leader and the chief HR officer are sitting next to each other. Okay? So what we really mean by this is there are lots of very, very good people analytics leaders. There are some bad ones as well. But there are many good ones. But there are many good ones maybe not doing the right things. So it's about getting things done. What we mean by that is, can they take a business problem for a start? Can they use analytics to get to a point of recommendations, and then can they move that to implementation and evaluate the organizational success? Can they get things done? Because to do all of that is hard. It requires organizational management. It requires budgetary constraints and managing within fixed budgets and maybe going asking for more money. And it really tests the ability for people to manage the organizational politics and some very uncomfortable conversations that they'll probably have to have along the way. And if the people analytics leader doesn't have those types of skills, you're probably as an organization not going to get as much value or impact out of people analytics. We have highlighted in The Power of People and elsewhere the 6 skills. I'm very sure this was shown yesterday by someone because I saw it on Twitter. Thank you, Ian. But we use this all the time to help organizations really think through the detail of the skills that are needed. And they're split into 2 lots of 3. There are 6 overall for the team. This is like a team assessment, as you might say. But the top ones are the ones that we particularly feel that the people analytics leader needs, which is surprising because a lot of people analytics leaders think that they need to come from an IO background or be a data scientist or have done a PhD in something. But what we find is that the best people analytics leaders, even if they may have one of the things underneath, are those that have these 3 things at the top: business acumen, a good dose of consulting skills, and great communication. Okay, let's get on to this one. So this is, are your projects being measured for return on investment? There is a lot of debate about, but not every people analytics project is about money, realizing money. I get that. Many people get that. Of course, you can manage risk avoidance, risk mitigation. You can clearly look at employee engagement and employee experience and all the great benefits to human beings and well-being and all those things. Yes, they're all important. One thing will turn the needle more than anything else is if you can prove that a project on people analytics or a project on analytics, a business problem overall that has a people element that is looked at analytically, if you can prove a return on investment financially, you're going to get attention. And other things will probably happen. So turning stuff into numbers, and we strongly urge people analytics leaders and chief HR officers on analytics topics to work with us, a counterpart in the HR finance team to get validation for every financial calculation of return on investment that you use. Different organizations use slightly different things. They've all got slightly different metrics. And although there's standardization on GAAP and all those sorts of things, there tends to be a way that an organization will look at how they measure return on investment in an organization. And it's going to be different for retail, finance, healthcare, pharma, whatever. But as you do it, if you can prove return on investment, it's going to be very, very impactful. And it happens on all sorts of projects as well. Again, another video which I unashamedly stole from someone, shows a little bit of the fun that can happen with analytics, but also the value that can be gained.
Snickers launched an advertising campaign in Australia in partnership with 7-Eleven that changes the price of the candy bar based on the
mood of the internet. And when anger goes up, Snickers prices go down.
Australia, get angry. Let's get those things down to 20 cents.
Introducing the Hungerithm, a hunger algorithm that linked price to people's real-time moods. As anger went up, prices went down at every 7-Eleven in Australia. Built on a 3,000-word lexicon from MIT, the Hungerithm analyzed over 14,000 social posts a day to determine sentiment. It even understood sarcasm and slang, and not just any slang, Aussie slang. Prices updated 144 times a day, and users simply clicked Get a Snickers on the Hungerithm mobile site to get a 7-Eleven barcode. No downloading apps or printing required. That would have just made them angrier. As prices dropped, fans were alerted via reactive social content, live in-store displays, and more.
Prices fluctuated wildly today, thanks largely
Visit snickers.com.au.
Each new price had a backstory. Whether it was a politician saying something utterly stupid, people losing their minds over a show, or a country breaking up with the entire EU. The Hungerithm turned the price of a candy bar into something people actually wanted to follow. Even Reddit liked it, and they hate everything. By changing its price over 5,000 times in 5 weeks, one of Australia's largest chocolate brands created a massive social media and PR spike. But one stat mattered most, a 67% sales increase. And for the first time, You're Not You When You're Hungry was linked to real-world mood and real-world sales. Snickers Hungerithm. The angrier the internet, the cheaper the Snickers.
So you can have a lot of fun with analytics as well. But you can also create a lot of value. And I think that's a really good example of where marketing wanted to do something very inventive, what we might call an experiment, but actually created huge value in return. So really good stuff. There's lots of other examples. I'm not going to go into that one with ISS. You can read about that in The Power of People. But I wanted to do this because I know Clearsight are in the audience somewhere. This is a really, really cool one because it's about using some of those analytical techniques like natural language processing. And natural language processing is, as we all know, text analytics, getting down to employee comments and actually working out. And what they found was in the northeast of England, in a particular organization, there was a lot of links between the words rain coming up in comments and the words uniform. And throughout this example of telecoms organization, they found that people were really basically moaning about when it rains, my uniform leaks and it's not very good. And as they helped the organization understand the detail between that and then did some qualitative analysis on the back of it, they found out that by putting in new uniforms, they could reverse that trend and make a grumpy story a very happy story. But what they really did was calculated the business value. And as you can see there, £1.8 million worth of value for that organization. A great example of new data with new technology focused on what seems to be an employee issue, moaning, but actually turns out into a business issue, which is about retaining customers and managing customer service in a really great way. So look at those things. Look at how you can turn, fancy analytics into real business value. It makes a difference. Final one is about, can HR business partners have evidence-based discussions? This is about, you can't do everything alone in HR analytics or in people analytics. You've got to do it with the help of all of your HR business partners, particularly frontline HR business partners in the organization. If you can do that, you're going to be more successful. And we always, in Insight 222, help people think about this process of 8 steps, but focusing on 1, 2, and 7. Yes, the analysis is really interesting, and we all know this. You get some data, you do something with it, you get some insights, you get some recommendations. All nice stuff. But often projects only start with data, end with recommendations. And I was in a session earlier today where it's like, if only we'd started thinking about business questions earlier, we would have made more impact. But it's not just about that, but it's also about communicating your stuff, getting your point across. I noticed on Twitter yesterday, actually, that Cole Nussbauer is writing a new book on storytelling with data. So she's got a second book coming out, which is going to be great because her storytelling with data stuff is fantastic about how to visualize things as well as you're communicating stuff across. Lots of things on storytelling. I'm not going to really focus on this. We'll send these slides out afterwards. What I did want to finish with, Al, just before we go into the panel, is just to give people a chance of where you are on this today. So let's do something collective. There's going to be a little bit of silence, and a little bit of thinking, but let's just take these 7 questions. If you want to get your phones out, you can see where you are. How do you score yourselves? If you put this up, you can take our 7-question survey right now. So it's 7 questions, 3 demographics, 1 email address. That's all it is. This will take 2 minutes. You'll get a quick assessment and a little tiny report with some hints and tips, if you do it. And just to make life really fruity, if you are here with your people analytics leader and you're sitting next to them or your boss, you can turn around to them and tell them how you answered question 5. My people analytics leader gets things done. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. Okay, so that's just a little assessment. Gives you, especially if there's 2 or more of you from the same organization, you get a chance to look at that. There's a couple of slides there with some hints and tips. You can obviously contact us. There's a couple of blogs and articles on this, and I'll be, Ian may already have done it, but we put a blog out yesterday on this under the My HR Future, talking about these 7 questions as well. So you can look at that on myhrfuture.com. But look, thank you very much, Al. It's always a pleasure to be working with you, as always, every day of the year. And if anyone's got any questions, yeah, except for
I'm going to sing happy birthday to you. Jonathan's birthday yesterday. He's still on the trip, but Jonathan, outstanding as usual.
Thank you very much.
All right, cheers.
All right.